Hey everyone, happy Monday. For some of you, it's a mindful Monday. Others of you, it's a motivational Monday. And if you're with me here on the Other Side podcast, you're back for another episode where we are all about being on this journey of mental health and really just willing to grow and learn with each other. I'm really excited to do this with you. Sorry for all the dings. I'm really excited to do this with you. It's an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to be able to do that with you guys as we are all on this journey together, to be honest, right? And so, if this is the first time that you're with me on the Other Side podcast, please go ahead and put a one in the chats. That way, I know if you are returning. If please let me know, put you're returning. I love to shout you out and say hello as well. And if you are watching the replay, go ahead and put replay in the comments. That way I know that you caught this on the replay. Love to hear your thoughts and everything that you guys have to say. It's been really helpful for me as we go on this journey together. And so typically we have a topic and we discuss it for a few minutes and chat for a little bit. So today's topic, I'm actually really excited about talking about how can we heal from loss. And a lot of times when we have loss, we encounter grief, right? In the grieving process. So I really wanted us to take a moment to recognize that many of us might be grieving right now. In fact, I saw one of my favorite therapists who has a has an Instagram and a TikTok recently posted that for many people, being depressed is a state of grief without having a place to relieve it. And it really got me thinking about that. How grief can really make us really sad, and especially if we don't even know that we're grieving. The What it could look like on the outside is it could look like that it could just look like we're depressed or we're sad. And so I wanted to get into some of the things that maybe we don't even recognize all the time um, as being a part of the grieving process. Because I think when we think of grief, we only think of death. We only think of people who have left us and gone on. And it's not always that, right? It sometimes is we grieve other things. So, hey, Bryn. So I wanted to get into some of those. So let's talk about that. There are three types of grief that I feel like we often overlook. One of them is called ambiguous grief. So this happens when there's a loss that's really unclear and a lot of times unresolved. So that could be like when you have a loved one with dementia, right? And so you've lost them, they don't remember you. And that's really tough because they're still present, but emotionally they're not there, right? Or maybe someone who is lost, like a missing person, but you never actually found them. So you don't even really know what happened to them, right? And so they're physically not present either. And you don't know, is there closure there? Like, is it resolved? And so it's just always unresolved. And you're left kind of grieving what was there and now is no longer. And I think a lot of times that can get missed. People don't even recognize that they're grieving that, right? Because you almost feel like you need permission to even grieve a loss like that. And I'm here to give you permission to acknowledge that you are going through a grief. It may be different from what normally we think of, but for sure it's real, it's there, and you could be experiencing it. The second one that I wanted to talk about is loss of identity. This recently occurred for me, and I'm sure many people can relate to this, but a lot of times that has to do with the roles that we're in or the self-perception that we have of ourselves as our own identity. So this happens after divorce a lot of the times, maybe even retirement, which many people think is a great thing, right? But sometimes people go through grief after retirement or some sort of career change, right? So the loss of this familiar identity can actually create these feelings of grief, of confusion, of anger, of sadness, right? Like it could actually create an experience that feels a lot like the loss of a person, even though it's really just the loss of your own identity. So I thought that that's really important for us to mention. And if you are going through something like that, or if you've ever been through something like that, please let me know in the comments. I myself am divorced. And I remember that was really, really hard for me. Not just the fact that you were separating from the person, but just the identity of being someone who is married and no longer married. I also thought all of a sudden it's an identity of a failure and like a failed marriage. And I had all sorts of thoughts around that. And so that was really tough for me. And so, which leads me to a lot of times an unacknowledged type of grief, number 3, which is a grief over unlived lives or missed opportunities. I think this one cuts deep, especially for those who I feel like are closer to dying, right? So if you ever worked with someone who worked in a hospice or volunteered at a hospice or had a family member in a hospice, a lot of times you're talking to these people and they're approaching their death or the end of their lives, and a lot of times there's regret in there, and that regret is not doing something. A lot of times people don't regret doing something, they regret not doing something. And so it's this missed opportunity that can create a significant expression of grief or experience of grief that someone has. It's this loss of the opportunity. It's this dream that you had and you just never went out there to try to even make it a reality, right? And that can feel really, really sad. Again, all of the different emotions of grief can pop up in relationship to that too. So I just thought it would be important to acknowledge the 3 forms of grief that we often overlook. Again, if you've experienced any of these, please let me know in the comments so it's not just me. All right, so now that we've talked about that, I thought it'd be really important. So now let's discuss the 3 ways to navigate or to heal from these types of loss. So the very first thing, it comes with everything that we've ever talked about. It's acknowledgement. You got to acknowledge your emotions. Acknowledge the fact that you are having feelings that actually feel like grief. This heavy weighted sadness may not just be depression. I mean, there could be depression with it, but it could be triggered by a loss of something, whether it's the loss of your identity or the loss of an opportunity gone by, or the loss of someone who is present but maybe emotionally gone, or maybe just an unresolved relationship has concluded, right? Like there may be some grief there. Maybe that's what's causing the sadness. Maybe that's what's causing the anxiety even, right? Because it's just like, oh, I don't know what to do. Some anger, right? Again, all of the different emotions that we know, right? They typically say there's 7 different stages of grief, right? All of those stages could be happening as we go through these different losses in our lives. And so awareness and acknowledgement is always number 1. Again, it could be sadness, it could be anger, it could be confusion. Any of these things are totally, totally normal. I will also like to say it could also sometimes be relief. And that I think is tricky because it typically is attached with guilt, because people feel guilty for feeling relief. And I'm giving you permission to say sometimes relief is mixed in that. And so just have the emotions without judging yourself. The second thing I would do is seek support. Look for friends, supportive friends, family members, people in the community. Just being around other people is always really helpful during this time. Support groups for something that's a little bit more structured might be helpful. And of course, therapy of any kind is going to be helpful while going through this period of your life as well. Number 3 would be to engage in rituals or like memorials. So what could you do to honor or remember either the person or the opportunity that's lost? What could be something that you could do to acknowledge that? And this could be something as simple as lighting a candle. It could be something that you write in your journal, or any type of symbolic act that really reflects your journey towards healing. That could be really, really helpful. So again, 3 ways to navigate through the healing process while you're going through your losses: acknowledge your emotions, seek support, and engage in rituals or like memorials type things. And then the other thing that I really wanted to focus on included, what are some practical tips for processing the grief, right? And you're looking to now move forward. Practicing mindfulness or meditation. So again, this helps you stay grounded in the moment without thinking, oh, I got to do all these things. I should. Don't should all over yourself. Just acknowledge the emotions that you're having right now. Work through them as they come up, right? You don't need to speed past them. There is no race in this, right? Your pace is your pace, and it's totally fine. Express yourself creatively. That could be really cool to express yourself in a creative manner. One of the things that you can do there is you can do something like writing, the journaling we talked about. Some people are really into painting or music or dance or all sorts of other forms of creative expression are all welcome here in this space. So if you are if you are somebody who likes to do something really creative, put that in the chat. What's the creative outlet that you really enjoy? This can often be a really therapeutic way to cope. So I highly encourage people who are into creative outlets. And the third tip would be to establish new routines. So after a loss, creating new routines or rituals can help you regain kind of like a sense of control, a control of normalcy even. And so these small steps can offer comfort and gradually guide you towards a new chapter in your life. So establishing those new routines can be really, really beneficial to you while you're going through your grieving process. So as a recap, there are a couple of things that we should think about when we're talking about grief. How do we heal from loss? Well, first, it's really important to sorry guys, there's so many things. So first, it's really important to identify 3 forms of grief that we often overlook. The first one was ambiguous. These are the ones that occur where it's unclear the loss or it's unresolved. This could include people, and it can also include relationships. The second is loss of identity. Huge. Loss of identity includes grief that can come from a self-perception or identity of self that is now lost. That can come from divorce, retirement, or a career change, for example. And the third is grief over unlived lives or missed opportunities. Lots of people feeling grief over there. So those are the 3 often overlooked forms of grief. For 3 ways to navigate through the process: 1, acknowledge. It's really important to acknowledge the emotions you're having. Seek support, rather in a group form or one-on-one, totally okay. And 3, engage in rituals or memorials. And then the 3 practical tips for processing the grief, especially towards moving forward. 1, practice mindfulness. This is, again, the acknowledgement. Your pace is your pace. You go at the pace that you're going, and it's okay. Give yourself permission and grace and acknowledgement for that. 2, express yourself creatively. Really, really huge to express yourself in that way. It can be extremely therapeutic. Dance, painting, pottery making, knitting, whatever. And number 3, establish new routines, new things that you're going to do in your life. I'm now going to walk every day. I'm now going to wake up and journal every morning. I'm now going to stretch every night before I go to bed, right? Acknowledge the person in my life. Every anniversary of their birth, I'm going to remember them deeply. And so establishing new routines, can be really, really helpful in creating comforts and gradually guide you towards a new chapter in your life. I hope you guys found all of these tips and ideas helpful for you. Maybe you even realize that you're grieving right now in your life and you didn't even recognize it. And if that's you, please put that in the chat and let me know. I definitely want to know what that is for you. And continue to just be aware, be present, be mindful. It's all okay. Remember, you're going at your own pace. I give you permission to give yourself grace. That's my time, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next week. But until then, have a great day.